The title of my presentation is Greenwashing has a Signaling Game. So key takeaways first. I'm framing this greenwashing as a signaling game among investors and the firms. So the investors will have to decipher whether they are green, they're actually green, that is, from the signals, or whether they are actually brown. And as mentioned earlier this morning by Professor Marcus, is that there are cheap signals and a lack of disclosure standards. We kind of incline the game towards a worse possible social outcome, a pooling equilibrium, in which the investors are not able to identify whether the firms are they mean they meant to keep the promises for green to be green. So I kind of like this is a bit. Now there are two sections to this presentation. One is the theoretical, which is heavily game theory. The other one is empirical. And in the empirical session, I looked at greenwashing by a double sorting method. Ex ante, the firms are sorted by something like the news sentiment, on their ESG announcement. Ex post, I sort them out on their ESG performance scores from the Refinitiv ESG, and I do a comparison. I'll talk more about that later. And empirically, I also found out that the firms that the greenwash has witnessed a steady decline from 2005 to 2021. So these are my key takeaways from this presentation. So motivation, signaling game model, empirical findings, and some policy implications. So I'm going to skip this. I think all of us know, why we should be doing something on this. I'm conscious of the time. So this is a classic signaling game, the lemons. The firms decide whether they want to be to keep the promises, whether in the green investments or not. And then the investors looking at their signals. In this case, these are new signals. Cheap talk, as emphasized by Professor Marcus. They decide whether that firm is going to be indeed they are green or not green. And of course, we know that there's a premium, at least some people say that there's a premium to be involved to be ESG conscious, socially conscious, and that. And based on that, the investors will, based on that, the firms can benefit if they are perceived to be green or ESG friendly. So this is a classic lemon scheme, adverse selection problem signaling game here. So good firms are those that plan to keep their ESG news commitments. Now, probably have guess some formal definition of greenwashing. Greenwashing happens when firms say that I do this, I do that, whether in their reports, whether in their news and all that, and then subsequently expose they do not keep their promises, right? So these green firms, the good firms rather, plan to keep their ESG news commitments, while bad firms do not. And investors, consumers try to decipher the firms through two news equilibrium. And there are two forms of equilibrium here that can result. One is the pooling equilibrium, in which it's not possible to distinguish the good and bad firms. The other is a separating equilibrium, in which they are able to be separated by their signals. It seems to now for pooling equilibrium, there's a multiple equilibrium due to some Cho-Krebs criteria, right? Which I'll talk about a bit later. So in any game theory, you have to know the payoff, and then you have to know the IC, the incentive compatibility. A firm payoff here is measured by mu I, which is the so-called investors premium or the greenwashing premium of a firm that's identified to be good. SI is a signal, which is just plain talk, cheap talk. It's almost zero. LI is the regulatory and legal costs. So that we're very dependent on that regime. If you put harsh punishments on firms that greenwash, then obviously this could be higher numbers. And just to highlight, there have been a number of cases, lawsuits on firms that actually, they are deemed or suspected to have greenwash, and that also count towards the legal cost as well. PI is when a firm says that you either do this or do that, whether it's a green project and or hire some, do some ESG projects and all that. So this PI will be the green project, ESG friendly costs here. So this is the payoff for the firm, regardless of good or bad, good and bad. I here would refer to whether it's good or bad here in this case. So investor payoff will come in the form of non-pecuniary social utility. The game hopefully will target a separating equilibrium. And in this case, in a separating equilibrium, the good firms will want to conform to being good, at least from the incentive compatibility. So on the left-hand side is when the good firms behave as good, right? And the left-hand side is when the good firms behave as bad. Yeah, which now that given that SI cancelled out, PI here, I'm assuming, right, that we got the good firm, regardless of whether they've been good, they will want to implement that green project, whether they're perceived to be good or bad. That is assumption. Yes. MUG is how the investors will reward that firm that's perceived to be green. LG is here is probably close to zero again, but this is the expected ex ante legal and regulatory costs on the good firms, which I would say, because they have been good and they really want to bona fide carry out the promises, we're close to zero again. And that will be greater than mu B. Mu B here is probably, again, is almost zero, because in fact, I would say that here, they would, now, on the right-hand side is when the green firms act bad, which almost doesn't happen. Very interesting remark by Professor Marcus is that the C to N news is almost always positive. In other words, the good firms, or for the matter, any firms, if there's nothing good to say, they just keep quiet. They won't report any bad news about their own negative social ESG commitments. So here is equal to zero, almost equal to zero, I would say. But I would define to be mu B. There's this phenomenon called greenwashing. They just keep quiet. Nothing good to say, don't say anything. So that's the IC for incentive compatibility of good firms on the left-hand side and the right-hand side. You can see that if the expectation of LG is high, ex ante, that would possibly push the equilibrium towards the left-hand side to be bigger, because this is a minus sign. And in this case, the good firms may even end up to be behave to be a bad firm somehow. All right. Now, for bad firms, it's similar, except that in this case, LB, all right. Now, if bad firms behave to be good firm, that is on the left-hand side. And if bad firms behave like a bad firm, that is on the right-hand side, the IC. It's quite similar to that, is that LB, the regulatory and the legal costs here, will be higher for bad firms. Since they are actually doing bad, they're not keeping to the promises, you can expect that ex ante, the LB will be higher, at least as perceived from the manager point of view, right? So again, the SI equals zero, PI equals zero, because the firm is just talk. There's no real plans to implement its ESG goals. But that is assumption, but it can be easily factored in just by using a delta PI. In this case, that if the bad firm chooses to implement its project ESG goals or not, there will just be a delta PI, right? So again, bad firms will rather send no signal green hash rather than appear bad, because mu B is very likely to be negative, I would say. Mu B is when the investors perceive that firm to be bad. All right. Okay. Now, in a pooling equilibrium in which investors are not able to distinguish, they will form a Bayesian belief on the distribution of the good and bad firms. Here, they will accord mu BG, which is I would say that is given by XP, which XP is a proportion of bad firms and XG is the proportion of good firms. So this will be a full equilibrium, and based on that equilibrium, they perceive how many is a good firm and how many is a bad firm. This proportion here. And empirically, if mu BG were to decrease, again, that would mean that mu G would when a good firm is perceived to be good, this will probably again push the equilibrium towards the green firms do not make any announcement at all, which is quite true, which is what we observed in a lot of news articles talking about the greenwashing phenomena. All right. So now that was my theoretical section. Now it's an empirical section. So from this definition of greenwashing, what I do is that I look at the news announcements regarding ESG announcement for a firm, ex ante, in the beginning of the year, and I sort them out according to that the sentiment. So the top sentiment at the top, right at the top of the decile, and that's the ex ante. So these firms are those that are saying, oh, I'm going to do this, could put up a rah-rah show and say that, yeah, they're going to keep up to their ESG goals. 1 year later, we compare their ESG scores based on Refinitiv. I think this the data that's been used by a number of the researchers. Again, I sort them out based on their ESG performance score, and I look at the top decile. So if ex ante, the firms in the top decile correspond to those ex post ESG performance, that means that they deem to not have greenwashed, right? It's a bit competitive. I'm looking at a scale. Are you able to keep up to your promises in the top decile or not? All right. So actually, it uses NLP, and I got the data from Refinitiv market side for the sentiment data, new sentiment, right? Specific on ESG, whether E, S, or G themes. So the second advantage is that I'm able to obtain the percentage of firms that greenwashed. Very simply, is that those that fall out the green tab will be those that have greenwashed, right? So I use data from 2005 to 2021. So it's from Refinitiv. Well, SF4 used to be the old name for Refinitiv ESG data. I sort them up into green, consumer, and brown firms. And because of the granularity of the data, I'm even able to break them up into the various individual pillars, E, S, and G. So I just filter out those that have greenwashed. I obtain their company data, the usual control variates, momentum, size, and market and book value. So I just find this excess returns of the control variates before and after ex post and ex ante. That will be I define to be my mu, the mu that is appearing in over here, the mu BG. So there's a link between, because in my previous submission, they say that there's not a very tight link between the empirical section and the theoretical section here. So that's the mu BG. And these are some of the results of my green empirical section. So percentage of firms that greenwash has trended down over the years. This is across all the green and brown firms. Now, bear in mind that good firms are not necessarily green firms. So the good firms here in this context refer to those firms that bona fide keep their ESG promises. So a brown firm can be good as well if they choose to keep their promises, right? So it's relatively stable for brown firms. Whereas green firms, greenwashing has kind of dropped, all right? And notice that one thing for brown firms, I didn't put it in the presentation slide, is that the brown firms, the PI is higher. The pay when brown firms choose to be green, whether it's oil and gas, they choose to do away with carbon, coal, or whether they choose to implement carbon capture technologies, that incurs a higher project cost. Because of that, there's less of a premium for them to be really to be greenwashing per se. Yeah, partly because of this PI now. So these are some of here shows you on the left hand side is the greenwashing premium, and on the right hand side is the percentage of firms that greenwash. And then you have this is for on the top left hand corner is for the whole ESG, the metric itself that comes from Refinitiv. After that is divided into E, S, and G. Right. So as a the trend here is that I would say that the number of the firms that for green firms has kind of trend down. Right? And the premium is really not statistically significant here, at least from a t-test perspective. There's only some highs in certain periods, and these highs I identified them to be correspond to some climate issues like the 2012 La Nina phenomena, 2016 post-Paris COP, and 2019, which when we start to have a lot of global attention on such issues. Okay, this is to show that this greenwashing new BG is not statistically significant. This part here is still in my thinking process. If you are going to have I also appreciate your thoughts on that. I understand I have a minute left. All right. So since it's a game theory, we can have a reverse game theory, a mechanism design, so such that the whole idea of this game is to push the game towards a separating equilibrium. Now, and I find that it's very difficult to do actually, at least from a point of regulatory perspective. I mean, if you can put it's going to be very hard because firstly there's information asymmetry. To actually then there's a mu L star, which is the regulatory and legal costs. But this is almost a very intangible cost, partly due to and bear in mind that court cases take a long time. All right. So what I do is that I try to this whole thing I try to have a separating equilibrium for good firms and bad firms, and I try to adjust L star such that they are incentivized to have a payoff in the separating equilibrium rather than the pooling equilibrium, right? Because here you have pooling equilibrium, and I form some inequality for L star. So this lower bound of this for L star, which is the kind of like the targeted regulatory penalty, regardless of ex ante, right? But it's very complicated. I mean, I couldn't put my head to it, but I think so much so that I rather think that it would be more feasible to have more information disclosure, more transparency in that as a measure. So in conclusion, I frame it as a signaling game to understand how the investors and the firms will behave. And this double portfolio sorting method would happily will happily help to maybe whether it's acceptable or not is a way to I mean, at least from definition I feel it can be a way to review whether greenwashing is profitable or not, and disclosure, transparency, and not penalties to achieve separating equilibrium. Thank you.